So my presentation is called Control Within Socialization. I'm starting off with this feminist quote from the book The Robber Bride by Margaret Atwood because it really signifies the importance of realizing the context in which we consciously and unconsciously socialize with others and how it affects our mental state. So I'm going to read the quote. Male fantasies, male fantasies. Is everything run by male fantasies? Up on a pedestal or down on your knees? It's all a male fantasy. That you're strong enough to take what they dish out, or else too weak to do anything about it. Even pretending you aren't catering to a male fantasy is a male fantasy. Pretending you're unseen, pretending you have a life of your own, that you can wash your feet and comb your hair unconscious of the ever-present watcher peering through the keyhole. Peering through the keyhole in your own head, if nowhere else. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. So this quote is implying that women police themselves through the male gaze. And this determines not only most relations between men and women, but also the relation of women and themselves. And this is a quote by sociologist Irving Goffman from his book, The Presentation of Self in the Everyday Life. And I'm going to just read a part of the quote. Individuals are concerned not with the moral issue of realizing these standards, but with the amoral issue of engineering a convincing impression that these standards are being realized. For Goffman, he argues that for people, what counts is not whether men are moral, but whether they seem moral to others. It explains how people focus more on the way they're being perceived. These two quotes relate because in both scenarios there is a constant power struggle between individuals. And what I'm trying to answer here is, how are we even able to be controlled when there is no awareness of the struggle, nor a relation between the perception of the individuals and the way we perform our actions? First, I'm going to debrief the complexity that is the self-concept and its formation. In Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytical theory of personality development, he analyzes the degree in which outside influences forms the unconscious mind and how the two forces continue to manipulate the other. He argues that personality is formed through conflicts among three fundamental structures of the human mind: the ID, the superego, and the ego. The ID is the most primitive of the three. It is entirely unconscious and is only concerned with instant gratification and basic physical needs and urges. The superego is concerned with rules and morals, also widely referred to as the conscience, or the moral compass. And the ego is the rational part of our personality, and it makes sure the ID and the superego are balanced in the practical sense of reality. So, with the example of stealing, the ID, which is the most primitive self, would only focus on the fact that I want this piece of clothing or piece of item right now. The superego would be the one to say that it's wrong, and your ego will be the one to go and buy it yourself. So then all the needs and wants are balanced. The important thing here, and what I am taking away from this, is that through this theory, Freud believed that our unconscious minds influence the way we behave, as well as conscious thoughts. In the fourth chapter of this book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel claims that humans develop self-consciousness through the perception of objects, and when I say objects, I am referring to the roles a person unconsciously gives himself and anyone they meet or know. When first encountering someone new, a person might try to assert themselves as the subject or the main person in the relationship and assign the other person the role of the object, which is like secondary character. This then will ultimately cause the first person, the subject, he will consequently fall into the role of the object despite his attempts, because when this person makes it known that they want to become the subject, then the situation becomes arranged. So then the only way for them to achieve this goal is by behaving in certain ways. And that behavior is the one being unconsciously controlled. This is what happens in Toni Morrison's short essay, Strangers. She recalls a night when she meets this stranger called Mother Something, And because of what this stranger is wearing and how those clothes seem so familiar to her, Morrison believes that her and this strange woman will create a lasting friendship. Well, the next day, this stranger was never to be seen again. At first, Morrison gets so mad because this lady didn't fit the role she assigned to her. But when Morrison and the stranger first met, that was the beginning of their strange subject-object relationship, where Morrison tries fitting into the subject role and puts the stranger into the object role. Now, after the stranger leaves, that's when it changes the roles of the relationship. Nothing of that is at the fault of the stranger, of course, because there was no obligation for her to stay. The importance of her absence is the toll it takes on Morrison. Jean Paul, a French philosopher, provides his analysis on the claims in the existential account of the human condition by way of an analogy of looking through a keyhole that is similar to the way Morrison explains his dreadful relationship with the stranger. The analogy refers to what occurs when a consciousness is forced to recognize that it exists not only as a center of its own being gazing outward, but also as a mere object in the world of others. This analogy also relates to the male fantasies quote I referred to back at the beginning. This keyhole analogy explains the way women lead their lives as they are constantly being judged by the male gaze. But if we, as women, accept this fact and attempt to allow it, then we are also defeating the negative connotations that go along with the statement. I'm not saying to try and fill out the male fantasies or fulfill them, but instead accepting it. And then as we grow to no longer find it important, it takes a piece out of the equation. Because the process a person goes through when determining relationships with others is mostly internal, the role one gives another in their mind is constructed of their idea of who that person is in relation to themselves. Also, since a person's perception is heavily influenced by their personality, then their particular perception will be used to cloud their judgment of the ego due to the formation of the self-concept in relation to Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytical theory. Self-concept creates limitations because our sense of self is what helps shape our personalities. Preconceived notions and personality is what shapes perception. Now, because our perceptions and consciousness are so important to the way we act, this newfound self-concept will contribute as a deciding factor towards reactions and the kind of relationships a person chooses to make. This can be limiting because of how everything in this process is unconsciously executed. A person doesn't realize that they are critically imposing themselves and their assumptions of the other person onto them. The significance of this research is the bridge it creates for those who are trying to understand social relationships in certain communities. Its importance is simply due to the observation of human activity in relation to the human mind. It proves how much of the actions we make are truly unconscious decisions. And this research could be used to determine what encourages other social behaviors like alienation and decipher reasoning behind why certain people are able to thrive in social settings while others may not. Thank you.